The skies over Earth ruptured with alien warships, innumerable hulls darkening the heavens like a plague of mechanical locusts. Continents recoiled in terror as the titanic Ithorian invasion fleet took position with earth-shattering silence, weapons bristling, poised to rain fire. Capitals burned with riots, sirens bleeding as civilization crumbled before the Xenos invaders had fired a shot. But a secret plan, breathtaking in audacity, lay hidden. Since first contact, eccentric Pentagon scientist Dr. Elias Strom had labored to transform Earth's cities into mankind's saviors. Now he rushed to contact Dylan Holmes, a scarred combat veteran wasting behind a desk. Strom pleaded they must persuade world leaders to activate the city mechs, gargantuan humanoid war machines built from metropolises, towering golems of glass and steel. It was madness, Dylan thought, but against this foe it might be humanity's sole hope. As leaders convened in desperate gambit, alien dreadnoughts thrummed with charging cannons, targeting the whimpering masses below. The city mech protocol was humanity's final card to play. Around the globe, skyscrapers groaned and pavements split as the colossal mechanisms engaged. Entire urban sprawls lifted from shuddering ground, unfolding segmented limbs, spires contorting into Titan-scale artillery. Thrusters ignited, monstrous mechanized warriors rising to challenge the Ithorian Armada. Aboard his flagship, Admiral Sagan gaped in shock as his forward screen filled with a wall of city mechs, each a match for any warship. Dylan took the helm of New York's towering avatar, former landmarks bristling with weaponry, resolve hardening as he faced down the invaders who sought to plunder his homeworld. The fate of Earth, quivering in the colossal shadows of transformed cities, now lay in the hands of everyday humans, piloting metropolis golems into space war. One thing was certain: this would be a battle for the ages. As the colossal city mechs rose to meet the Ithorian invasion fleet, the hastily drafted pilots grappled with the neural control systems. In the cockpit of the New York mech, Dylan Holmes felt the machine respond to his thoughts, servos whirring and joints groaning as he took a step forward. The neural link designed by Dr. Strom allowed him to command the titanic mech through sheer willpower. "I think I'm getting the hang of this," Dylan said, flexing the mech's massive hands. But his fellow pilots struggled. Jack Maverick Reese, the brash fighter jock commanding the Los Angeles mech, overcompensated and nearly toppled into the Mumbai mech piloted by Dr. Vikram Patel. "Watch it, hotshot," Vikram snapped over the comm. "These aren't your precious fighter jets." As the pilots found their footing, the Ithorian ships held position in orbit. A transmission from the flagship crackled through the mech's speakers. "I am Admiral Sagan of the Ithorian fleet," a guttural voice declared. "I demand to speak with your representatives." Dylan and Dr. Strom found themselves face to face with the imposing admiral on their view screens. Sagan's features were sharp and angular, his eyes glinting with a mixture of surprise and begrudging respect. "I must admit, we did not expect such a display of technological prowess from your species," Sagan said. "Your city mechs have given us pause, but do not mistake our hesitation for weakness." Dr. Strom leaned forward, his voice steady. "We will not submit to your tyranny, Admiral. Earth stands united against you." Sagan's expression hardened. "Then you leave us no choice. We will not hesitate to unleash our most devastating weapons. You have one Earth rotation to reconsider your foolish defiance." The transmission cut out, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Dylan and Dr. Strom exchanged a grim look. "We need to get these pilots combat-ready fast," Dylan said. They gathered the city mech pilots at a remote training facility in the Nevada desert, far from civilian populations. The mechs towered over the landscape, their shadows stretching across the sun-baked earth. Tensions ran high as the pilots assembled. Many were still reeling from the sudden transformation of their cities and the weight of the task before them. Jack Reese jabbed a finger at Dylan. "I don't take orders from desk jockeys. I should be leading this operation." Dylan met his glare head-on. "This isn't about your ego, Reese. We're all in this together." Dr. Vikram Patel stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. "Gentlemen, we have a limited window to prepare for the Ithorian invasion. I suggest we focus on understanding these machines and developing a strategy. As the pilots began their crash course in mech combat, Dylan couldn't shake the image of Admiral Sagan's cold gaze. The Ithorian fleet hung in the sky like a sword poised to fall, a constant reminder of the threat they faced. In the heart of the New York mech, Dylan gripped the neural control grips, feeling the machine respond to his will. The fate of Earth rested on the shoulders of this unlikely band of heroes and their incredible city mechs. They had to find a way to push back the Ithorian invasion before it was too late. The Nevada desert sun beat down mercilessly as the city mech pilots assembled at the remote training facility. Colonel Drake Thorne, his weathered face a map of past battles, stood before them with arms crossed. "Listen up," he barked. "You may have piloted fighter jets or driven tanks, but these mechs are a whole different beast. We've got limited time to get you combat ready, so let's get to work." The training regimen was brutal. Dylan felt his muscles scream as he pushed the New York mech through its paces, dodging simulated missile fire and returning volleys with pinpoint accuracy. Sweat poured down his face, the neural link transmitting every movement of the colossal machine directly to his brain. Jack Reese, still jam-packed at Dylan's leadership, pushed his Los Angeles mech harder than anyone. "Watch and learn, Holmes," he sneered over the comm as he executed a flawless evasive maneuver. Meanwhile, in a makeshift lab at the base of the Mumbai mech, Dr. Vikram Patel pored over data from the Ithorian ships. His eyes widened as a pattern emerged in the shield harmonics. "Dr. Strom," he called out, "I think I've found something." The two scientists huddled over the displays, discussing the possibility of a resonance beam that could disrupt the Ithorian defenses. As they worked to integrate the new weapon, alarms suddenly blared across the base. "Incoming!" Colonel Thorne's voice crackled over the speakers. "Cloaked Ithorian scout ship detected. All pilots to your mechs." Chaos erupted as the pilots scrambled. Dylan's heart raced as he connected to the New York mech, feeling the massive machine come to life around him. The sky lit up with weapons fire as the scout ship launched its attack. "Reese, flank left," Dylan ordered. "Patel, provide covering fire." But Jack had other plans. "I've got this," he snarled, charging headlong at the Ithorian vessel. "Damn it, Reese, fall back," Dylan shouted. It was too late. A concentrated blast from the scout ship struck the Los Angeles mech, sending it stumbling backward. Jack's scream of pain cut through the comm channel. Without hesitation, Dylan maneuvered the New York mech to shield Jack's damaged machine. "Dr. Patel, now's our chance. Use the resonance beam." The Mumbai mech's arm reconfigured, a pulsing energy building at its core. With surgical precision, Vikram fired the newly integrated weapon. The beam struck the scout ship, its shields flickering and failing. In a blinding flash, the Ithorian vessel exploded. As the dust settled, Dylan climbed down from his mech and strode toward Jack, who was being helped from the smoking wreckage of the Los Angeles machine. "What the hell were you thinking?" Dylan demanded. Jack, his face pale with pain and humiliation, met Dylan's gaze. I'm sorry. You were right. I nearly got us all killed." Dr. Strom approached, his brow furrowed. "The resonance beam worked, but it's not enough. We need more firepower to take on the entire fleet." In orbit, aboard the Ithorian flagship, Admiral Sagan received news of the scout ship's destruction. His fist clenched in rage. "Enough games," he growled. "Prepare the fleet for full assault." Commander Zorak stepped forward cautiously. "Admiral, perhaps we should reconsider. These humans have proven more formidable than we anticipated." Sagan's eyes flashed dangerously. "Are you questioning my orders, Commander?" As the Ithorian Armada began its advance, the atmosphere at the Nevada base was tense. Mechanics swarmed over the damaged Los Angeles mech, while Dr. Strom and Dr. Patel worked feverishly to enhance the city mech's capabilities. Dylan stood with Colonel Thorne, strategizing their defense when an urgent message came through from Dr. Strom. "Dylan, you need to see this," the scientist's voice trembled with excitement. "I've found something in the scout ship's wreckage. It changes everything we thought we knew about the Ithorians." As Dylan rushed to the lab, his mind raced. With the Ithorian fleet bearing down on them and Earth's defenses still untested, the weight of humanity's fate pressed heavily on his shoulders. Whatever Dr. Strom had discovered, he hoped it would be enough to turn the tide of this seemingly impossible war. Dylan burst into the lab, his heart pounding. "What did you find, Dr. Strom?" The scientist's eyes gleamed with excitement as he held up a data crystal. "This contains encrypted files from the scout ship. I've managed to decrypt some of them. And, Dylan, the Ithorians were once our allies." The revelation hit Dylan like a physical blow. "What? How is that possible?" Dr. Strom activated a holographic display showing images of humans and Ithorians working side by side. "It seems there was a time, centuries ago, when our species collaborated, but something went wrong and the alliance fractured." As they pored over the data, Dr. Patel's voice crackled over the comm. "Dylan, I've found something else. There's information about a rebel base harboring insurrectionists against Sagan's regime." Colonel Thorne joined them, his face grim. "This changes everything. We need to act fast." The colonel outlined a daring plan, a stealth mission to the rebel base, seeking an alliance and intelligence to use against the Ithorian forces. Despite concerns about stretching their limited resources, Dylan knew it might be their only chance. "Let's do it," he said, his eyebrows furrowed. The next hours were a flurry of activity. Engineers swarmed over the city mechs, retrofitting them for deep space travel and installing experimental cloaking technology. Dylan watched as the New York Mech's familiar skyline was augmented with sleek, alien-looking components. As they prepared to embark, Jack Reese approached Dylan, his usual bravado replaced by a newfound humility. "I want to apologize again for my actions earlier. I'd like to join the mission, if you'll have me." Dylan nodded, extending his hand. "Welcome aboard, Jack. We need every skilled pilot we can get." The journey through deep space was arduous. Dylan piloted the New York Mech with Dr. Strom and a small crew, while Vikram commanded the Mumbai Mech with Jack operating weapon systems. The vastness of space made the city mechs seem small, despite their titanic size. After what felt like an eternity, they located the rebel base, an ancient asteroid that had been converted into a formidable stronghold. As they approached, alarms blared through the cockpit. "Our cloaking is failing," Vikram's voice crackled over the comm. Swarms of Ithorian drones poured from the asteroid's surface, weapons blazing. Dylan gritted his teeth, maneuvering the New York Mech to intercept. "Jack, target those drones," he ordered. The Los Angeles Mech's weapons systems came to life, picking off drones with surgical precision. But for every drone destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. "We need to get inside," Dr. Strom shouted over the din of battle. Dylan pushed the mech forward, using its massive arms to swat aside drones as they fought their way toward an airlock. With a grinding of metal, they forced their way inside. As the dust settled, they found themselves face to face with a group of armed aliens led by a grizzled female Ithorian. Her eyes narrowed as she leveled a weapon at them. "I am Terran," she growled. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't blast you out of the airlock right now." Dylan stepped forward, hands raised. "We're here to form an alliance. We have a common enemy in Admiral Sagan." Terran's expression flickered with recognition at the name. "Sagan? How do you know of him?" "He's preparing to invade our world," Dylan explained. "We came here seeking help to stop him." For a long moment, Terran studied them. Then slowly she lowered her weapon. "You have courage, human. I'll give you that. Perhaps we can help each other after all." As they began to discuss terms of an alliance, alarms blared throughout the base. A rebel technician rushed in, panic etched on his alien features. "Commander Terran, we've detected a massive Ithorian flotilla on an intercept course. It's Sagan's forces. They've found us." Dylan exchanged a grim look with his team. The battle for Earth's future was about to begin in earnest, far from home among the stars. The alarms blared with renewed urgency as the massive Ithorian flotilla appeared on long-range scanners. Dylan's stomach dropped at the sight of the enemy armada, dwarfing their small rebel force. "Everyone to battle stations!" Terran barked, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Humans, get to your mechs. We'll need every bit of firepower we can muster." Dylan sprinted for the New York Mech, his heart pounding. As he connected to the neural interface, the colossal machine hummed to life around him. Through the view screen, he saw the Mumbai and Los Angeles mechs powering up, their retrofitted forms gleaming under the asteroid's harsh lights. All systems online, Dr. Strom reported from his station. The resonance beam is at full capacity. The asteroid's massive bay doors ground open, revealing the vast expanse of space. At the center of the Ithorian fleet loomed a behemoth that made Dylan's breath catch, the Dreadnought. "That thing's the size of Manhattan," Jack's voice crackled over the comm, a hint of awe in his tone. "Focus, Reese," Dylan commanded. "We need to buy time for the evacuation. Vikram, coordinate with the rebel fighters. Jack, you're on weapons. Let's move." The three city mechs launched into the void, immediately swarmed by Ithorian fighters. Dylan gritted his teeth as he maneuvered the New York mech, its massive arms swatting enemy ships aside like insects. Jack's aim proved true as the Los Angeles mech's weapon systems lit up the darkness, picking off fighters with surgical precision. But for every ship they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "The Dreadnought's shields are impenetrable," Vikram shouted over the din of battle. "Our weapons aren't even scratching it." Dylan watched in horror as the titanic vessel advanced, shrugging off the combined firepower of the entire rebel fleet. A massive energy beam lanced out from its prow, carving through the asteroid's defenses like paper. "We can't hold them off," Terran's voice crackled through the comm. "All forces, fall back to the inner sanctum. We need to evacuate now." The city mechs formed a defensive line, covering the retreat of the smaller ships. The Dreadnought's weapons pummeled them relentlessly, each impact sending shudders through the mech's frames. "Hull integrity at 60%, Dr. Strom reported, his voice tight with strain. "We can't take much more of this." Dylan's mind raced. They needed a plan. Fast. His eyes fixed on the approaching Dreadnought, its shield shimmering under the barrage of rebel fire. An idea struck him. Desperate, possibly suicidal, but their only chance. "Dr. Strom, can we overload the resonance beam?" he asked. "Theoretically, yes," the scientist replied, "but the feedback could fry our systems. We'd be defenseless." "Do it," Dylan ordered. "Jack, Vikram, get clear. I'm going to buy you some time." Before they could protest, Dylan pushed the New York mech's thrusters to maximum. The cityscape blurred around him as he rocketed toward the Dreadnought, dodging incoming fire. "Resonance beam at 200% capacity," Dr. Strom warned. 300%, 400%. "Now!" Dylan shouted. A blinding beam erupted from the New York mech, striking the Dreadnought's shields. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a ripple becoming a tidal wave, the alien vessel's defenses began to fluctuate wildly. "It's working," Dr. Strom exclaimed. "The shields are destabilizing." But the victory was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the New York mech as systems overloaded and shut down. The massive machine drifted helplessly in space, directly in the path of the recovering Dreadnought. "Dylan, get out of there!" Jack's voice crackled over the failing comm system. Through the view screen, Dylan watched the Mumbai and Los Angeles mechs retreating with the last of the rebel ships. At least they'd bought some time. He closed his eyes, preparing for the end. Suddenly, Terran's voice cut through the static. "I'm sorry, humans. I was wrong about so much. Let me make this right." Dylan's eyes snapped open. "Terran, what are you doing?" "What needs to be done," she replied, her voice heavy with tenacity. "The base's reactor is rigged to detonate. It won't just destroy the Dreadnought, it'll tear a hole in space-time. You need to get clear." "No!" Dylan shouted. "There has to be another way!" But Terran's mind was made up. "Tell your people what happened here. Don't let Sagan win." The comm went silent. Dylan watched in horror as the rebel base began to glow with unnatural energy. He had seconds to act. "Dr. Strom, can you get the thrusters online?" "Barely," the scientist replied, "but we'll have almost no control." "Do it!" The New York mech's thrusters sputtered to life just as the rebel base exploded in a cataclysm of light and energy. The Dreadnought, caught in the blast, shattered like glass. The shockwave hit the mech with the force of a tsunami, sending it tumbling end over end into the void. Dylan's world became a whirlwind of alarms and flashing emergency lights. Through the chaos, he caught glimpses of the other city mechs, battered but intact, carried along by the cosmic maelstrom. As quickly as it began, the turbulence subsided. The New York mech drifted in eerie silence, surrounded by the scattered remains of the rebel base and the once mighty dreadnought. "Systems are completely offline," Dr. Strom reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're running on emergency power only." Dylan tried the comm, desperate to contact the others. "Jack, Vikram, can anyone hear me?" Only static answered. As the adrenaline faded, the enormity of what had just happened began to sink in. They'd struck a significant blow against Sagan's forces, but at a terrible cost, and their ordeal was far from finished. In the vast emptiness of space, the battered city mechs floated amid the debris of battle, their occupants clinging to life and hope. Somewhere out there, the Ithorian Armada regrouped, and Admiral Sagan plotted his revenge. The war for Earth's future had only just begun. The scattered remains of the battle drifted past the New York mech's view screen as Dylan struggled to process the enormity of what had just occurred. The destruction of the dreadnought and Terran's sacrifice had dealt a significant blow to Sagan's forces, but at a terrible cost. As emergency power flickered through the mech systems, a crackling voice broke through the static. "Dylan, can you hear me?" It was Jack, his transmission weak but audible. "I'm here," Dylan responded, relief washing over him. "What's your status?" "Battered but functional," Jack replied. "Vikram and the Mumbai mech are with us. We've picked up scattered distress signals from rebel survivors. What's our next move?" Dylan's mind raced. They couldn't let this victory go to waste. "We rally," he said, his voice firm. "Sagan's forces are reeling. Now's our chance to strike back." Over the next few days, as they worked to repair the city mechs, Dylan coordinated with the surviving rebels. Using encrypted channels, they broadcast a call to arms across the galaxy, urging freedom fighters to unite under Earth's mechanized banner. Their first target, Gareth Prime, a shipyard world vital to Sagan's war machine. Intelligence suggested a new Ithorian superweapon was under construction there. "It's a risky play," Colonel Thorne warned during the mission briefing. "But if we can take out those shipyards, we'll cripple Sagan's ability to wage war." Dylan nodded, studying the holographic display of Gareth Prime. "We'll need every advantage we can get. Dr. Strom, what's our status?" The scientist's eyes were ringed with exhaustion, but his voice was steady. "The New York mech is at 85% capacity. It'll have to do." As they prepared for the assault, Dylan received word that a team of rebel saboteurs, led by an alien named Zira, had already infiltrated the facility. Their intel would be crucial for the coming battle. The jump to Gareth Prime was tense, the mech pilots on edge as they emerged from hyperspace. The shipyard world loomed before them, its surface a maze of construction facilities and orbital tethers. "All units, engage!" Dylan ordered as they plunged into the planet's atmosphere. The New York mech led the charge, with Mumbai close behind. Alarms blared as enemy fighters swarmed to meet them. Dylan gritted his teeth, maneuvering the massive machine through a hail of energy blasts. But something was wrong. The resistance was too organized, too prepared. "Dylan, we've got a problem!" Vikram's voice crackled over the comm. "Those aren't standard Ithorian fighters. They're—" His warning was cut short as a massive shape emerged from the clouds. A dreadnought, even larger than the one they'd destroyed days earlier, loomed over the battlefield. "It's a trap," Dylan realized, his blood running cold. A new voice, cold and mocking, filled the comm channels. "So predictable, humans. Did you really think we wouldn't anticipate your pathetic counterattack?" "Commander Zorak," Colonel Thorne growled. "Sagan's attack dog." The dreadnought's weapons came online, unleashing a barrage that shook the city mechs to their core. Alert klaxons screamed throughout the New York mech as systems began to fail. "Hull integrity at 40% and dropping," Dr. Strom shouted over the din. "We can't take much more of this." Dylan's mind raced. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but retreat wasn't an option. Not when they'd come so far. "All units, follow me," he ordered, pushing the New York mech into a steep dive. "We're going for the core." The city mechs plunged towards Gareth Prime's surface, dodging energy beams and debris. Dylan's hands flew over the controls, guiding the massive machine through a gauntlet of defenses. They burst through the planet's industrial crust, plowing into a nightmarish landscape of molten metal and twisting machinery. Zorak's forces pursued them relentlessly, Praetorian mechs emerging from hidden bays to engage in close-quarters combat. "We need to overload the main reactor," Dr. Strom shouted, his fingers dancing across his console. "It's our only chance to take out the shipyards and that dreadnought." Dylan nodded grimly. "Do it!" As they fought their way deeper into the planet's core, Dr. Strom worked feverishly to rig the New York mech systems for an overload. The temperature inside the cockpit rose to unbearable levels as they neared the reactor chamber. "It's done," Dr. Strom announced, his voice heavy with finality. "But someone needs to stay behind to ensure the chain reaction." Dylan's heart sank. "There has to be another way," he protested. But Dr. Strom shook his head. "There isn't time. Get the others to safety. I'll finish this." Before Dylan could argue further, the scientist had already begun the overload sequence. Alarms blared as the mech systems went critical. "Go!" Dr. Strom shouted. "That's an order!" With a heavy heart, Dylan engaged the emergency evacuation protocols. As he was pulled to safety, he caught a final glimpse of Dr. Strom, silhouetted against the reactor's pulsing light. The remaining city mechs rocketed away from Gareth Prime, barely outpacing the massive explosion that consumed the planet. The dreadnought, caught in the blast, shattered into a million pieces. As they drifted in the aftermath, Dylan struggled to process the loss of Dr. Strom. But even in his grief, he knew their actions had sparked something greater. Across the galaxy, oppressed worlds were rising up, inspired by their defiance. The comm crackled to life with messages of support and offers of aid. New allies were emerging from the shadows, ready to join the fight against Sagan's tyranny. "What now?" Vikram asked, his voice weary but determined. Dylan gazed out at the stars, each one a potential battleground in the war to come. "Now," he said, "we build an army." Dylan's eyes swept across the assembled fleet, a patchwork armada of rebel ships gathered from across the galaxy. At the heart of the formation, Earth's city mechs loomed like ancient colossi, battle-scarred but unbowed. "All units report in," he ordered, his voice steady despite the weight of command. "New York mech standing by," Jack responded, his familiar drawl a comfort amidst the pre-battle tension. "Mumbai mech ready for action," Vikram chimed in, the willpower in his voice palpable. One by one, the other commanders signaled their readiness. As the check-in concluded, Dylan took a deep breath. "Today, we strike at the heart of Sagan's empire. Zizor Prime awaits." The jump to hyperspace was smooth, practiced. As they emerged in the Zizor system, the harsh volcanic world filled their view screens. Sagan's fortress, a jagged obsidian monstrosity, dominated the horizon. "Incoming!" Vikram shouted as the sky erupted with enemy fire. Dylan's hands flew over the controls, guiding the New York mech through the maelstrom. "Evasive maneuvers! Jack, return fire!" The city mech's weapons blazed to life, energy beams lancing out to intercept incoming missiles. Around them, the rebel fleet engaged Sagan's defenders in a furious dogfight. "Colonel Thorne, what's your status?" Dylan called over the secure channel. The grizzled veteran's voice crackled through. "Insertion successful. We're proceeding to the shield matrix. ETA 15 minutes. "Copy that," Dylan replied. "We'll keep them busy up here." The battle raged on, a cosmic dance of destruction. Dylan coordinated the assault, directing fire and plugging gaps in their defenses. But as the minutes ticked by, the tide began to turn against them. "We've lost Gamma Squadron," an Allied commander reported. "Beta Wing is falling back." Dylan gritted his teeth. "Hold the line. Thorne's team just needs a little more time." Suddenly, a new voice cut through the comm chatter. "This is Commander Zorak requesting permission to join your assault." Dylan's eyes widened in disbelief. "Zorak? What game are you playing?" "No game," the Ithorian replied, his voice heavy with perseverance. "I've seen the truth of Sagan's madness. My ships and I stand ready to aid your cause." For a moment, Dylan hesitated. Then he made his decision. "Permission granted. All units, Zorak's forces are friendlies. I repeat, do not fire on the incoming Ithorian ships." The battle shifted as Zorak's fleet engaged their former comrades. The distraction was all Thorn's team needed. "Shield matrix disabled," the colonel's triumphant voice rang out. "You're clear to engage the fortress?" Dylan's mind focused with commitment. "All mechs, form up on me. We're going in." The massive machines plunged through Sizor Prime's atmosphere, weathering storms of superheated plasma and molten rock. As they neared the fortress, new threats emerged. Sagan's dreaded Purger-class dreadnoughts. "Bring them down," Dylan ordered, pushing the New York mech to its limits. The city mechs clashed with the Purgers in a titanic struggle. Metal screamed and energy weapons flared as the colossal machines grappled at point-blank range. Warning klaxons blared throughout the New York mech's cockpit. "Hull integrity at 30%, Dr. Strom's replacement, a young engineer named Chen, reported. "We can't take much more of this." Dylan's mind raced, searching for a solution. He found it in the fortress looming before them. "Jack, prepare for a full power transfer to the kinetic drive." "What?" Jack's voice was incredulous. "Dylan, that'll tear us apart." "It's our only shot," Dylan replied, his voice grim. "On my mark." The New York mech shuddered as it accelerated, pushing through waves of enemy fire. Dylan's hands were white-knuckled on the controls as he lined up their trajectory. "Now, Jack!" The mech system screamed in protest as all power diverted to the kinetic drive. The massive machine became a blur, a city-sized projectile hurtling towards Sagan's stronghold. "All hands, brace for impact," Dylan shouted. The world went white as the New York mech collided with the fortress. When Dylan's vision cleared, he found himself surrounded by the burning wreckage of both mech and citadel. Jack's voice was ominously absent from the comms. As Dylan struggled to his feet, a contingent of Zorak's troops materialized from the smoke. "This way, sir," their leader urged. "Sagan is attempting to flee." With a final glance at the destroyed cockpit, Dylan hefted a fallen energy rifle and joined the pursuit. The heart of Sagan's fortress was a maze of twisting corridors and debris-choked chambers. They fought their way through pockets of desperate resistance, drawing ever closer to their quarry. Finally, they cornered the admiral in his private hangar. Sagan, his immaculate uniform now torn and bloodied, whirled to face them with hate-filled eyes. "You think this is over?" he snarled, raising a wicked-looking sidearm. "I am the Ithorian Empire." What followed was a desperate, close-quarters firefight. Energy bolts sizzled through the air as both sides sought cover among idling shuttlecraft. Dylan's world narrowed to the sight of his rifle and the sound of his own ragged breathing. A lucky shot clipped Sagan's arm, sending his weapon skittering across the deck. As the admiral lunged for it, Dylan tackled him to the ground. They grappled fiercely, each seeking to gain the upper hand. With a final, desperate surge of strength, Dylan pinned Sagan to the floor. The tyrant's eyes bulged as Dylan's hands closed around his throat. "This," Dylan growled, "is for Earth." As Sagan's struggles weakened, the sounds of battle beyond the hangar began to fade. Victory cheers echoed through the comms. The uprising had succeeded. Dylan released his grip, letting Sagan's unconscious form slump to the deck. He stood slowly, his body aching from a dozen wounds he hadn't even noticed. "It's over," one of Zorak's soldiers said, awe in his voice. "We've won." But as Dylan looked out over the ruined hangar, he knew the real work was just beginning. Sagan's regime had fallen, but the galaxy remained fractured and wounded. It would take more than one battle to heal the scars of war. "Secure the prisoner," Dylan ordered, his voice hoarse, "and get me a status report on our forces. We've got a lot of work ahead of us." "Us!" Dylan's words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of all they had endured and all that lay ahead. In the days that followed, Sizor Prime became a hive of activity. Dylan and Zorak worked tirelessly, coordinating efforts to stabilize the planet and its people. Former Ithorian leaders were rounded up and held for war crimes trials. while those of lower rank who had defected or surrendered were granted clemency. "We can't afford to alienate potential allies," Dylan explained to Zorak as they surveyed a makeshift holding facility. "There's too much work to be done." Zorak nodded, his alien features set in a grim expression. "Agreed, but we must remain vigilant. Not all will accept this new reality so easily." As if to underscore his point, reports began filtering in of scattered Ithorian loyalists, regrouping under a new leader, General Galor. The warlord's face flickered on a nearby holoscreen, his eyes burning with fanatical intensity. "Sagan's regime brought shame upon our people," Galor's voice boomed. "But make no mistake, we will have our vengeance against these rebel usurpers and their Earth allies." Dylan's fists clenched at his sides. They had won the battle, but the war, it seemed, was nowhere near the end. With Zorak overseeing operations on Zizor Prime, Dylan returned to Earth alongside the crews of the surviving Mumbai and Los Angeles City Mechs. As they approached their home planet, a bittersweet ache filled his chest. They were victorious, but at a terrible cost. The sight of the Mumbai Mechs standing sentinel over a gathering of world leaders brought Dylan back to the present. He stood at a podium, facing a sea of expectant faces. "We have achieved what many thought impossible," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "But our work is just beginning. Earth will rebuild, and we will stand with our galactic allies as they transition to self-governance." As applause echoed through the hall, Dylan's gaze fell on Dr. Vikram Patel. The scientist's expression was a mix of excitement and apprehension. Later, in a secured briefing room, Vikram laid out his findings. "The Ithorian technology we've recovered is remarkable," he explained, holographic schematics flickering to life around them. "With it, we can construct new mechs that will far surpass our old models." "But," Dylan prompted, sensing the unspoken caveat. Vikram's shoulders sagged. "But we lack the resources. Earth is still reeling from the invasion. Building these new mechs would require materials and energy we simply don't have." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Without the city mechs, Earth's newfound place among the stars felt precarious at best. A knock at the door interrupted their brooding. Zira, the battle-hardened alien warrior, entered without waiting for a response. "I may have a solution to your problem," she said, her voice low and urgent. "There are rumors of a hidden Ithorian research bunker on the fringes of your solar system. If the intel is accurate, it could contain exactly what you need." Dylan's mind raced with possibilities. "How certain is this information?" Zira's eyes narrowed. "Certain enough to risk a mission, but we'd need to move quickly before Galor's forces catch wind of it." Dylan nodded, decision made. "Gather the pilots. We'll use the Los Angeles Mech as transport. If there's even a chance of finding what we need to rebuild our defenses, we have to take it." As the others filed out to prepare, Dylan gazed out at the Earth below. The planet seemed so fragile from this vantage point, yet it had endured so much. He silently vowed that it would endure whatever challenges lay ahead. With renewed purpose, Dylan strode from the room. The mission to the hidden Ithorian bunker awaited, and with it, perhaps, the key to securing lasting peace for Earth and its newfound galactic allies. The Los Angeles Mech's engines thrummed as it pushed through the asteroid belt, navigating a treacherous path of space debris. Dylan stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the navigation display. "We're approaching the coordinates," Vikram announced, his fingers dancing across the sensor controls. "But I'm not detecting any structure." Dylan nodded. "That's the point. Zira said it was hidden." As if on cue, a frozen dwarf planet loomed ahead, its surface a patchwork of craters and ice. Tyla, manning the weapon systems, leaned forward. "There," she said, pointing to a barely perceptible irregularity in the planet's contours. Dylan guided the mech closer, and the camouflage shimmered, revealing the entrance to the Ithorian research bunker. With practiced precision, he maneuvered the massive machine into the concealed docking bay. As the airlock cycled, Dylan addressed the team. "Stay alert. We don't know what defenses might still be active." No sooner had they stepped into the facility than alarms blared. Panels in the walls slid open, disgorging swarms of Ithorian combat drones. "Take cover!" Dylan shouted, diving behind a fallen support beam as energy bolts sizzled past. The rebel soldiers fanned out, returning fire. Tyla's rifle sang a staccato rhythm as she picked off drone after drone. Vikram crouched behind a console, furiously working to hack into the bunker's systems. "I'm in," he called out after several tense minutes. "Shutting down the security protocols now." The drones froze mid-attack, then clattered to the floor. In the sudden silence, Dylan stood surveying the damage. "Everyone okay?" With nods of affirmation from the team, they pressed deeper into the facility. The corridors were a maze of twisting metal and dormant machinery, lit by the eerie glow of emergency lighting. They emerged into a vast chamber dominated by a towering data core. Vikram's eyes widened as he interfaced with the system. "This is incredible," he breathed. "The schematics here, they're light years beyond our current tech." Dylan's gaze swept the room, taking in the rows of silent assembly lines and storage pods. "Can we get it running?" Vikram nodded, already elbow-deep in circuitry. "It'll take some doing, but yes. With this, we could build mechs that would make the New York look like a child's toy." As Vikram and Dylan worked to reactivate the Ithorian systems, Tyla and the rebels secured the perimeter. The facility gradually hummed to life, ancient machinery awakening after centuries of slumber. A piercing alarm cut through their moment of triumph. Tyla's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got incoming. Galler's forces have found us." Dylan raced to the control center, bringing up the external feeds. A fleet of Ithorian warships approached, led by a massive dreadnought. "We need more time," Vikram said, his voice tight with urgency. "The data transfer isn't complete." Dylan's mind raced. "Tyla, how long can we hold them off?" Her reply was grim. "Not long enough. That dreadnought will tear us apart." "Then we don't give them the chance," Dylan decided. He opened a channel to the Los Angeles Mech. "Initiate emergency launch sequence. We're evacuating." As the team scrambled to load the salvaged tech onto shuttlecraft, the Los Angeles Mech engaged the Ithorian fleet. Energy beams lanced across space, scoring hits on the smaller ships, but the dreadnought pressed inexorably forward. Dylan watched from the shuttle's viewport as the Los Angeles sustained hit after punishing hit. The mech's armor buckled, systems failing. "We can't outrun them," Tyla said, her hands white-knuckled on the shuttle's controls. Dylan's gaze fell on the nearby gas giant, its swirling storms a maelstrom of destructive potential. "We don't have to," he said. "Issa, can you hear me?" The Los Angeles Mech's AI responded, its voice distorted by static. "Yes, Dylan. What are your orders?" "Set a collision course for the dreadnought," Dylan commanded. "Use the gas giant's gravity well to accelerate. We'll finish this together." As the shuttle streaked away from the battle, Dylan watched the Los Angeles plunge into the gas giant's atmosphere. The mech became a blazing meteor, tearing through the dreadnought's shields and ripping the massive ship apart. The shockwave buffeted their small craft, alarms blaring as systems overloaded. When the chaos subsided, Dylan took stock. Of their team, only he, Vikram, and Tyla remained. Earth's familiar blue sphere grew larger in the view screen as they limped home. Dylan's expression was grim as he contemplated the battles yet to come. They had the technology now, but at a terrible cost. As the shuttle began its re-entry, his mind turned to the new mechs they would build, and the fight to secure humanity's place among the stars. The shuttle's landing struts compressed as it touched down on Earth's soil. Dylan's eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the skeletal frames of new city mechs stretched towards the sky. Months of tireless work had brought them to this moment. Vikram's voice crackled over the comm. "Final system checks are complete. The symbiotic interfaces are stable." Dylan nodded, a mix of anticipation and trepidation churning in his gut. He strode towards the nearest mech, its gleaming surface a testament to human ingenuity fused with Ithorian technology. As he approached, a hatch irised open, revealing a pilot's chamber unlike anything he'd seen before. Settling into the neural interface cradle, Dylan felt the mech come alive around him. Synapses fired, and suddenly he wasn't just controlling a machine, he was the machine. Every sensor, every weapon system, every micron of armor became an extension of his own body. "Vanguard unit, report in," he commanded, his voice resonating through the comm channels. One by one, the pilots of Earth's new elite force checked in. Their voices were steady, but Dylan could sense the undercurrent of nervous energy. They all knew what was at stake. As the mechs powered up, their massive forms casting long shadows across the launch bay, alarms blared. Zira's face appeared on the main view screen, her expression grim. "Dylan, we've got incoming. Galor's forces have hit a civilian outpost in the Centauri system. Casualties are in the thousands." The air seemed to freeze in Dylan's lungs. This was it, the moment they'd been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. "Understood," he replied, his mind focused. "Vanguard unit, prepare for immediate deployment." The debate that had raged among the coalition's leadership was rendered moot in an instant. As the mechs thundered out of the launch bay, Dylan knew they were committed to a path of open retaliation. Space folded around them as they engaged their jump drives. Emerging in the midst of chaos, the outpost was a smoldering ruin, debris fields dotted with the flickering life signs of survivors. "Rescue teams, focus on extraction," Dylan ordered. "Combat units, form up on me. We're going after Galor's fleet." The Vanguard unit moved with fluid precision, years of training melding seamlessly with their new symbiotic enhancements. Energy weapons lanced out, carving through the smaller Ithorian ships with brutal efficiency. But as they pressed their advantage, a monstrous shape loomed before them. Galor's mobile forge filled the view screen, a planetoid-sized abomination of metal and pulsing energy fields. "All units, concentrate fire on their production nodes," Dylan commanded. "We take out their ability to regenerate ships. We might stand a chance." The battle raged, Earth mechs darting between the larger Ithorian vessels like angry wasps. For a moment it seemed they might succeed in crippling the mobile forge's shipyards. Then a new presence entered the fray. Galor's voice boomed across all frequencies, dripping with malice. "You dare challenge the might of the Ithorian Empire? Witness true power." A hybrid monstrosity of Ithorian and human tech emerged from the bowels of the mobile forge. Its dark matter cannons pulsed with scarcely controlled energy. Dylan barely had time to shout a warning before the first salvo struck. His mech systems screamed in protest as armor buckled and internal components fused. Through the haze of pain and terror, he saw other units falling, pilots' life signs winking out. "Evasive maneuvers," he roared, pushing his damaged mech to its limits. "Zira, we need reinforcements." As if in answer to his plea, a new wave of ships dropped out of hyperspace. Zira's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line, Dylan. We'll keep Galor busy." Through the maelstrom of battle, Dylan spotted Vikram's shuttle streaking towards the mobile forge. Understanding dawned, along with a cold dread. "All units, fall back," Dylan ordered. "Vikram, whatever you're planning." But it was too late. The scientist had already breached the mobile forge's defenses. Alarms blared as the massive structure's reactors began to overload. Space itself seemed to convulse as the mobile forge imploded. The shockwave tore through both fleets, sending ships and mechs tumbling. Dylan's battered mech spun end over end, systems failing. As the silent darkness of space engulfed him, Dylan's last conscious thought was of the billions of lives that had just been extinguished in that terrible flash of light.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.